thought they had banished us forever. But now, finally, we have returned.
And indeed we have returned. Welcome back to Writer's Showcase. I'm very pleased to be back again. Sorry for the hiatus last week. I went rock hounding with a very, very, very good friend of mine, and who's leaving to go to France for the next 2 years. Anyway, let me bring in my guests, starting with...
What's that?
You tell me.
Good day, everyone.
Always a pleasure.
How-
Maxilla. Glad to see you.
Yes, sir. Hello, hello.
Hi, Wolvie. Good to see you. Hopefully we'll have more people trickle in.
Hey, Wolfie. Hello.
Let's see. Yep. And as we always, another one is Wasia. Welcome, Wasia.
Yo, what's up, everybody? It's good to be back on.
Man, that trailer will never not be badass.
Yeah,
that's hardcore.
yeah, that's why I chose it, my dude.
Mm-hmm.
Although
Welcome.
although I am thinking about getting a different one this time using the Horus Heresy trailer, or at least a snippet of it.
Nice.
Yeah.
Tell me, do you bleed? You will.
Done.
Welcome on.
To sell his bodily fluids.
God damn
Hello,
it.
Wolfie and Becca. Nice to
What's
see you
up,
guys.
Becca?
Hello
Greetings,
there.
weirdos.
I mean, she's...
Hello there.
General Kenobi.
Oh man, that needs to be my intro. Man.
That's because I said hello there, isn't it?
Yeah.
That is
Oh,
God damn
accurate.
it.
that meme
I
is
did-
great.
I didn't even realize I said it. That's how ingrained prequel memes are into my psyche.
No, it's a it's a normal phrase to say. Hello there.
That too. Also, I would like to throw shade because... Anyway, yeah, well, Dunn muted himself.
Yeah, because you don't want to hear me eating.
That is fair. So,
Fair enough.
yeah.
Mhm.
So
Alrighty.
how are we going to decide who goes first? Should we decide between ourselves? Because I gotta get going at around like 12:50.
You should probably go
Okay.
first.
All right. Dunn
That's
doesn't.
just-
Yeah.
That is the deal. I know how.
Three.
Oh, let people use them all the time. I just manipulate the meaning for bad jokes.
That is true. That is 100% what you do. Like almost all the time. I've noticed it.
Like the other week when you said, "No, you're not done. You're finished. I'm done."
I actually cracked that joke in the back room before we got on.
Oh, nice.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Ooh. Okay.
Alrighty. Since you have
Well.
a time constraint, Wasia goes first. Anybody else have time constraints?
No time constraints here.
Okay. Alright.
All right. So,
You go first.
yeah. So this chapter follows on immediately after the previous one. So you haven't seen it, may want to see the previous showcase for some context, but basically the TL didn't read is that Lucy is concerned about the fate of her homeworld. She thinks something bad might have happened over there and that might happen again. She wants to go back. Malik is like, no. And she asks why, and he says we're not supposed to be out over here. And she's upset. She's upset about this whole thing, but instead she decides to just cool off and accept her situation and work with it. Malik says there's this program that we can use to send you back, and he asks her to go down to the medical bay, get some lab work done, and she discovers how horrifically and terrifyingly powerful she is. And so we follow on to the next chapter, chapter 5, Stopgap. Sir, are you sure about these orders? The man peered over his shoulder as the screen glowed against his pale face. Does he really want us to go public with this? He asked, looking at Hattori, who stood behind him. The head of intelligence straightened his back, dressed in a blackened armor with a crimson robe flowing over it. His face was deathly pale, eyes and veins faintly glowing orange, while his black hair was tied in a back knot, and his facial hair trimmed to a mustache and goatee. Well, of course, he began. If we are to garner public support, this is the exact sort of thing we want to go public. Vilify and demonize the opposition so they would turn a blind eye when the time comes. The man nodded along, looking back at the console and releasing the footage. Then Hattori squinted. Which reminds me, he muttered, his eyes wandering across the circular interior of the nerve center. Would someone like to inform me how our top candidate is doing? One of the men at the terminals glanced at him, drawing his attention to the agent. Hattori walked across the room, looming behind the man as his already pale face turned whiter. The head of intelligence squinted, reading the headline for himself. Sir, the agent stammered, tugging at his collar. Senator Chimera. She's dropped into the single digits? Hattori cut him off and scowled. His hands folded behind his back. How is that possible? The agent sighed. Sir, it's her recent debate performance. Apparently she's polled almost 10% worse than before. Hattori tilted his head. This is too dramatic of a drop for her to be one bad debate. Something else must have. He trailed off, his spotting another headline provided by the GBN. The orange glow in his veins became brighter as his hands tightened. Human trafficking? He growled. The agent staggered and stammered. Sir, would you like me to suppress it? Or maybe even try to spin this as misinformation? Hattori snarled. Don't bother. If the GBN and the socialites reporting on it, it's already too late. Such a dramatic redirection of public opinion's impossible. You'd be better off deflecting a tidal wave. He sighed, pinching the bridge of his nose as his forehead crinkled. Who's our next best bet? The agent looked back at the monitor, pulling it up. Captain Malik Abdullah, sir. The head of intelligence rolled his eyes. Well, we'll have to write him off. As of today, he should already be dead. The agent swallowed, looking away, prompting Hattori to squint. He is dead, isn't he? His gaze panned across the room, noticing the agents could not look at him. Finally, a man stood up from his seat. Sir, we have a complication. The head of intelligence turned around, facing the agent as he swallowed. Assassin A2. She turned on Lynn and Volta. Hattori's brows jutted up. He turned around, facing the brave soul who dared speak up. The head of intelligence approached him, the orange glow in his veins burning brighter. Excuse me, he uttered as his eyes ignited, his armored boots clattering as he approached the agent. How, in all 9 rings of hell, is that possible? The man hung his head. It shouldn't be, but he reached for the terminal. But there's something else, too. The agent pulled up an audio file. Thanks to the implants in Lennon's head, we have an audio log of what happened on the surface. Hattori clenched his hands before folding them in front of himself. He looked at the screen, watching the file play as Malik's voice came through. Well, it's clear your heart's in the right place. Do you have a name? Actually, I got The agent hit paused. One moment, sir. Let me skip ahead. Hattori huffed, his gaze sharpening on the man. But, to answer your question, I don't know. He tilted his head. I think I have one, but I just can't remember it. The audio log stopped, leaving the rumbling of vents and electronic buzzing to fill the silence. Hattori placed a hand over his chin. She forgot her own name, he smirked, almost laughing. Then there's a chance she doesn't remember us as well. The agent nodded, pulling out a video. Not just that, sir, but we also have this footage as well. Hattori leaned in, watching the recording from the stasis room. Rosa walked up to the door, briefly looking back at a pod with a black-haired woman suspended in it. Then she turned around and walked away. Hattori's eyes shot open, the glow in his veins fading. He straightened out, standing behind the agent. Did she just look at Maria and not recognize her? He blinked, stroking his chin. That's right. There's no guarantee that the stasis pods can preserve one's memory. His eyes darted to the agent before shouting his orders. Get us information to Lord Jaliel, at once! The agent nodded. Tell him we are not yet forsaken. She could hear her own breath. Lucia lied on her side, the sheets of her bed reaching up to her navel, and the cool air blasting against her exposed topside. She swallowed and blinked, still focused on the lab results, and she shuddered. Well, at least I know why I'm always so warm. She rolled onto her back, staring up at the ceiling, hearing the quiet ringing of a silent room and the thud of her own heart. She slipped a hand over her chest, feeling the rhythmic pulsing within. Lucia took a deep breath and sealed her eyes, but even still, she could see it, all of it. They had every right to be worried about me, Lucia winced. I almost crushed a guy's hand without even realizing it. She opened her eyes, her breath becoming labored as she recalled Malik's offer and the suspicion the Vanguards had treated her with until now. Her jaw jittered, piecing everything together in her head. They're not planning on turning me into a weapon, are they? Her ears twitched, hearing a quick and subtle buzz. Her eyes opened and she pivoted her head, seeing her H card light up. She picked it up, reading the message to herself. So he's sending Grace to drop it off. Wonder what it could be. She lowered her arm, resting it across her waist. She continued giving the ceiling a blank stare, waiting until she heard a knock at the door. Well, it's gotta be her. Lucia pulled her legs from underneath the sheets and threw them over the side of her bed. She got up, walked to the door, and slid it open. Behind it stood the First Sergeant Mendez, wearing an olive green officer's uniform, and letting Lucia see her face. She was of ebony complexion, her rough, short black hair tied into a few dozen knots. Her eyes blinked, darting down at Lucia's body before extending her arms out. Lucia looked at the piece of red cloth she offered, then back to Grace's eyes. It's a dress, Sergeant Mendez explained. Malik thought you should have one. Lucia's cheeks reddened. She smiled and took the dress from the sergeant's hands. Thanks, she opened, flabbergasted. I never thought anyone would just give me the smile swapped to a frown. The dress was all covering, from shoulders to wrists, neck to ankle. Do you think you got something less stuffy? Like maybe some cutouts here and there? Around the chest and thighs, maybe? Grace raised an eyebrow, then she groaned, placing her hands on her hips. I hate to tell you this, but no. Malik comes from a more, how do I say, conservative background. Like, in most systems, you can practically go around butt naked and nobody would bat an eye. But on his homeworld, I heard that women can't even show their hair. Lucia blinked, glancing down at herself. Oh, so you got no problems with me showing my... You know. She waved a hand around her chest. Grace squinted and tilted her head. No, I see that all the time, on just about every planet I've visited. She crossed her arms and smirked. Although, I wouldn't recommend going to any meetings like that. Lucia smiled and giggled. Can you imagine? Grace's forehead creased as she nodded along. Yeah, it would be pretty weird. Lucia slowly regained composure as she stared at the dress. Her eyebrows came together, drawing lines in her head across the fabric. Huh, that could work. She looked back at the sergeant, seeing her clear her throat and sway. Hey, she called, getting her attention. Got a pair of scissors I can use? Grace blinked and tilted her head. No, but there should be one in the drawer over there. Why? Lucia smirked, taking another look at the dress. Let's just say I'm gonna get this ready for dinner, she said, before looking back at the scowling sergeant. Okay, but nothing too risque. Got it? Lucia nodded. Yes, ma'am. Grace smiled and extended her hand. All right, good luck. Lucia looked at it, her throat jittering as she began to shake. Grace raised an eyebrow and Lucia jolted. Thanks, she stammered with a smile. Grace nodded along, taking the hint and walking away. Lucia watched her go and sealed the door behind herself. She fiddled around with the fork, rotating it as though drilling into the plate. Lucia's eyes darted around the yellowish interior, spotting viewing ports out into space. Had she not known that she was in the center of the ship, she would have fallen for the illusion. Finally, she heard someone walking up to her, looked up from the table, and saw Malik. He was dressed in full white with some sand gold accents in his suit. The jacket seemed to make his already broad shoulders seem broader, and Lucia could have sworn his white undershirt was slightly opened. She reclined back in the velvety chair, crossing one leg over the other. Giving a subtle smile, Lucia greeted him. Hey, Malik. He blinked, his eyes darting up and down. Lucia's dress had a cutout on its side, reaching her hip, and the top half was cut into a pair of ribbons running across each other, covering her chest and wrapping around her arms. His face reddened, but he took his seat. I see you've made some modifications, he stated, spotting the glimmer of her necklace. Yeah, she answered back with a nervous smile, her eyes starting away. I was hoping you wouldn't mind. I just thought I could spice it up a bit, you know? Stuttering, he answered back. No, you're fine. It looks good on you. Smiling, Lucia sat up, fixing her posture. So, have you picked what you want to eat? He asked. Lucia raised an eyebrow and picked up her H card, scrolling through it. No. Let's see, yeah, let's get that spicy chicken salad. She selected the item. Maybe some water, and her eyes lit up. Oh, and for dessert, can we get the raspberry chocolate cake? Malik squinted. Okay, big fan of chocolate? Lucia submitted her order and continued on. Yeah, dark chocolate especially. People complain that it tastes so bitter, but I actually kind of like it. Better than overdosing on sweets, you know? Malik nodded along as Lucia sat down her H card. She watched Malik look through the menu, feeling her heart slow down as her memory kicked in. Her eyes wandered away as she laid back, folding her arms underneath her chest. The weight of the past 48 hours came pressing down on her shoulders. That horrifying thought came back, reinvigorated. Oliver's pain and the screams. The many screams in burned forms. Her lower lip began to quiver, and her eyes watered. She saw the wounded woman again, staring into her watery violet eyes. I didn't do that, right? I couldn't have. Lennon's squirming form came back to mind, and a tear came rolling down her face. Her eyes widened, her hands shaking. Shut up! Even if I did, that doesn't change the fact that I can control this. No, I have to control this. I can't let it happen again. Lucia? She shook her head, turning her attention back to Malik. Are you alright? She wiped the tears from her eyes and answered with a quivering voice. Yeah, it's just... She paused, swallowing and catching her breath. These gifts I have, they're... Her eyes wandered away, feeling her heart wrench and twist. If I join the VGC, will they just turn me into a weapon? Use me to kill people? Malik set down his H card and folded his hands. Lucia, listen to me, he opened, looking her in the eyes. No matter what they say, you're a human being. We're not going to force you to do anything you don't want to do, he explained. Lucia swallowed and nodded along. These gifts of yours, we don't fully understand them, but there's a lot of potential to do good with them, even in the VGC. Malik laid back in his seat with a slight smile. And besides, if it's of any consolation to you, the only people you'll be killing are the ones trying to kill you and your team. Her eyebrows came together. Only because we're there to kill them. Malik sighed, stroking his trimmed beard. The vents and electronics hummed as Malik gathered his thoughts. Finally, he fixed his posture and spoke up. All right. What about the Planetary Security Corps? They're one of the 9 active Vanguard Corps, and our focus is on safeguarding the USR's systems. So their first and foremost priority is protecting civilians. In fact, that corps specifically will be the one deployed to Earth during resettlement. Lucia reclined, the tension leaving her face. Well, that could work. I won't be sent to invade someone else's home. Instead, I'll be... She smiled, feeling her eyes water. Yeah, I could work with that. She nodded, just as the drone arrived to deliver their food. Okay, I'll do planetary security. Malik smiled. All right, let's eat. Lucia smiled back, looking down at the table as her dinner was served. And done.
You're not done.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm finished. I am finished. My bad.
What? John didn't do it, and then you did. How dare you?
Wow, man, he beat him to it. I will say this. Don't look at the chat because it's just a bunch of utter nonsense.
God
Is
damn
ever
it.
not?
Yeah,
They're just a bunch of flirting going on over there.
God damn it.
Flirting, messing around, me, Becca, and Trip, planning
Although-
on being done.
I have to ask a question. I put it in the chat to remind myself. Those two people at the beginning. Who on earth? Where's the build up to that? I don't recall either of those names ever being mentioned. Is that just a new POV that just came in out of nowhere?
Yeah, that is essentially a new point of view.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't.
those guys
I
were
think
not
you should do a
mentioned
little
before.
bit of build up or something. I'm not sure. What do you think, Aspiring and Done?
I feel like I feel like these guys are the bad guys, and it's more of a mystery. Was that the
Oh yeah,
intention?
I got that. I got that too.
Yeah, these guys are definitely an antagonistic force who are present in the story. Their names, Hattori specifically, will come up later, and a fair bit as well. He is a
Is that a
pretty.
Kill Bill reference by any
Hattori
chance?
is actually no, that's a Hattori Hanzo reference. Like he is just he is literally in the most elaborate reference to ninja mythos I've ever done, which isn't very elaborate, but yeah.
Well, I will say the rest of the chapter, when you got back to Wissia's point of view, it was great. It was really good. Stuff's going on. I just gotta say this. This isn't a criticism or anything. This is just something that I wanted to say when I came on here. You've been building up her powers for a minute now, and I am waiting for some intense action. Let's see a crazy fight scene, because the last chapter, especially the way you built her up to be like a living furnace, all those degrees of temperature and just this explosive superpower or whatever it is,
Yeah.
I'm waiting for the payoff now. All right, where's the fight scene? Let's get to an intense fight scene.
I hate to tell you this, but I think the thing I was trying to establish this whole time is that she has to control it and keep it under wraps.
Oh, of course.
Well,
I knew
like,
that.
The thing, I think I kind of am a little upset about the way I worded it, because the end of the conversation between Grace and Rosa, she doesn't shake her hand. Like, Grace extends her hand because she wants to.
Yeah, because she can burn it off.
Yeah, she's afraid of her own strength, and
Right.
all the nightmares she's had of all these burned bodies and shit like that. The thing I was trying to imply was that she's afraid that she did that. She doesn't want to accidentally cause something like that to happen again.
Mm-hmm. What is a good way to build up a character? That's complicated. That's really complicated. There's so many different ways, but there's also so many wrong ways. I suppose maybe I should find a YouTube video and send it to you, Wolvie, from experts on how to do that.
Brendan Sanderson has an hour-long lecture on this subject, so if you just want to look up Brendan Sanderson YouTube and its Sanderson lectures, you'll be able to find some pretty good summation. But essentially, one of the things that he does is he talks about 3 major things that you can talk about in order to make a character engaging: proactivity, moral standing, and competence.
That's pretty nice. Because I've actually managed, because I think I've gotten I think I'm showing a level of progress and progression with the character, and I think I've established pretty kind of overtly and pretty explicitly her sense of morality.
Yeah,
Just
I would
just a
say
little
so.
bit, yeah.
And of course, the constant burning heat leads to her having to wear lesser clothing than some would be accustomed to.
I like the
Yeah.
prude joke. I find prude and necessity of not prude working together a very, very funny combination.
Yeah.
Nice.
Was there anything I don't know, jarring in that chapter? Like tonally.
I think that worked fine as a just continuing the story, getting to work on the getting Lucia back into the world, or at least like introduced and kind of starting on the okay, this is what the plot, roughly what the framework we're going to be. So I think it worked well that way.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah, to be honest, nothing. I'm serious. Like, there's, I don't know if it was. I just found it odd the new POV of the two new people at the beginning. That was a little jarring for me, but because I was like, wait, who on earth? Who are these people, and where did they come from? Is this a different story? Like, I was legit thinking that until I started seeing the connections when they started talking about Wissia and her sister, and then I realized, oh, this is a antagonist POV. Gotcha.
Yeah.
That's pretty much the only thing. Everything else was pretty excellent, actually.
Yeah, because the thing I wanted to establish about our antagonists is that they are puppet masters through and through. Specifically, Hattori. His job as head of intelligence is to manipulate information, spread disinformation, or select specific pieces of information and squelch others that fit the agenda that his faction wants to perpetuate. It's a whole thing. You will end up seeing the fruits of their labor later on throughout the course of the story. As a matter of fact, you might even see it in the
Right.
next chapter, even. Who knows?
Wow, I can only imagine. I wrote this story. I wonder what happens next.
God damn it. Also,
sorry. Go ahead.
what did Becca mean by what did Balerion mean by the Jane Astrid?
Austin, she's the lady who wrote Pride and Prejudice.
Ah.
Mm.
Okay. I mean, because I was thinking about doing some slice of life bits sprinkled throughout the course of the story, I guess. But yeah.
What does that mean? I've heard that phrase. I'm trying to remember what that means. Slice of life. What does that mean in
It's
this
just
context?
it just means this is just a part of the daily routine. Doesn't actually develop the plot or anything. It's just them going about their normal day.
Gotcha. I know what you mean now.
Yeah. Aspiring, you've been a bit quiet about this. Do you have any commentary on anything?
Yes, so Wissia is naturally hot and is showing off her chest, and there's a little bit of "don't turn me into a weapon" commentary in the background.
Oh, wow. In a nutshell, yeah.
God damn it.
Oh, yeah, really quick. I'm glad you brought that up. I forgot about that part. When she mentioned, are they contemplating making me into a weapon? I thought that was pretty good. I thought that was really interesting. That was engaging.
Aww.
Oh, man.
It's a pretty burn, actually.
Well, at least you're honest.
Jesus Christ, Becca.
Uh,
At least be amusing about it.
I mean, could at least also, steer me in the right direction.
Becca.
fucking up, you know.
Man,
Yeah, Becca, your Tarek's rubbing off on you.
politely can't stand each other, then marry. Oh no! Oh man!
Yeah, you're right, Becca. You know, she's right about that. I should cut to more instances of that because I'm like, oof, this is every single time I read that word, I'm like, oof, that's gonna be a red flag. That's gonna
You
set
can't
people
even
off.
use breasts anymore. That's how bad it is. You have to use chest.
Or
I can't-
bosom.
I can't even
Bosoms
use
also.
I can't even use a neutral term like that anymore because it's.
It's become
Oh, well.
dirty because of you.
This is what happens when you write a story about a female protagonist who's burning hot on the inside, and I mean that by temperature.
What the fuck do I do now to fix all this? This seems like a mess.
Welcome to my life. As I'm writing, I'm realizing, crap, this is going to become a problem in the showcases, isn't it?
You were saying this,
Just saying,
fine.
Uxula, I never have commented on any of my characters' breasts, I think.
No, I don't think you did.
Good, also, since, you know, I do consider the first one a child, despite being 21.
Okay.
Hey, I'm going to repeat Noble. Is Vampire hot? I'm kidding.
Well, if anybody has any advice on how I could fix this shit, please DM it to me over Discord, I guess, because I do not want that sort of thing to become an issue.
At this point, mate, I'm just gonna ask, do you care? I'm sure you've read stories which have a tone and usage of the words.
God.
I would advise one thing, and this is what I'm doing. I have 3 with me right now. Go to a library and check out books that are intriguing to you. Basically, just scroll the shelves until you see something that looks interesting. Whether you like sci-fi, fantasy, mystery, adventure, like I've shared some of the books that I checked out at the library, and I have them with me. And it's useful. It's actually really useful to see how published authors write and to see what they use and what they don't use. And it's very useful. So yeah, I would advise that. Just
I guess.
Walk around until you see something that looks interesting and go, huh. And, read the flap, read the first page, and then, or, read the blurb and read the first page and go, yeah, I'll give this a check out.
Yeah, I guess I'll just go ahead and remove some more instances of the word. Should be fine then. Okay.
Okay. Don't beat yourself up over it, bro. It's all good.
It's okay to
In
let
fact, the
that
chapter
shit-
was quite great.
If you ever feel bad about how dirty your thing sometimes seems, just pick up an erotica and you'll feel better.
Thank you, it's flattering.
or just read Robert Jordan, where he mentions folding arms under breasts roughly 2 to 3 times per chapter in a female POV, or if a female character is involved.
Yeah, it's what I
really
do,
quick.
except, not for the erotica. It just, I remind myself, if I think my story seems dumb and bizarre, that Gravity Falls is a thing and also pretty good. And I feel better.
God damn it. Okay. I won't. Okay. Thanks, Becca. I won't be too harsh on myself about that. Anyway.
She tuned in at the word chest and chocolate.
Which I think
Now
she
that
wants
I've
to
heard-
eat off. I think she wants to eat chocolate off her
no,
part's
done.
chest.
Now that I've heard Becca's voice, on in like a full stream, I realize how she talks. So how she's writing is no surprise.
Yeah.
I'm referring to
All
the
right.
one you guys did on King Arthur the other day. That was fun.
All right. Well, if there's nothing else any of you guys want to commentate on, I'll just go ahead and hop off.
Alrighty.
All right.
See you later, buddy.
See you
Okay.
later.
Later.
Have a good day.
Sorry for taking so long. Bye.
Always gotta go.
Always does.
I know his family situation. Very busy house. Very, very busy, so that's why.
Hmm.
Alrighty.
So, Aspiring, are you on a time constraint at all?
No, not at all. You?
Nope, me neither. I don't
Alright.
really mind who you choose next.
Alright, Oxilla, then Aspiring.
Alrighty. How much time do we have for recaps? I know you said 20 minutes for the chapter.
Yeah, I let the OSC go a little bit long. Uh,
5 minutes?
probably 5 minutes.
Alright, I'll try to make it quick. Alright, some of you guys recall my first few chapters, so this will be a little refresher. We're at the very beginning of my novel, and just really quick, how does the microphone sound for everyone? Just want to make sure it's good quality, not too close to my face where it's peaking.
Sounds like it's fine to me.
All right. Are you near your mic? I don't know if you spelled that M-I-K-E. I'm not sure what that meant. All right.
That's for Aspiring,
Gotcha.
not you. And it's just because probably.
Oh yeah. Aspiring. You are a tad bit quiet. Okay.
Yeah.
Anyways, let me get the recap over with. Okay, so we're at the very beginning of my novel. So this is the setup for the story. In the prologue, we were introduced to a father and his family outside in the woods by a campfire. And the father's name was Urim, and he has 3 kids. He has Nathan, and he has his eldest daughter Dinah, and then his wife Hadara was holding their infant baby boy, and he's telling stories at the campfire about a place called the Shamayim, and that's the title of the novel. And it's this like mystical, magical kingdom with just crazy possibilities, with things that you can't even possibly imagine. It's got stuff like seas of glass and fountains of living water and so on and so forth. And he's telling stories to them. And so this is from the perspective of Nathan, the 6-year-old, the middle child, and he's telling him, and he's really fascinated by it, and he really loves the stories. And so that chapter goes to where a nearby soldier, a colonizer, is listening because he's on watch from unknown threats to the audience as of yet. And when the father starts to talk about taking power from the place and using it for good, that's when the soldier gets threatened, and he doesn't get threatened. How do I word it? He basically he snaps and starts threatening the family and holding his weapon out, stuff like that. And so the father has to defend himself, and he tells him a story about how not just because sharks in the ocean are dangerous doesn't mean the entire ocean is. Sharks are only on the surface level, but the rest of the ocean is vast and mostly unexplored, and there's tons of possibilities there. It's basically a metaphor for the Shamayim, the supernatural realm. So and then let's see what else. Dang it, I had all this. Why am I struggling so bad? Yeah, in that same chapter, oh yeah, I also had to make a major correction, or like a change to my story, where I've decided to just name the nations and the kingdoms what they actually are. So you'll see that in this chapter too, unlike the prologue. So it's basically they're Africans, Urim and his family, and they live in a unknown country of Africa, and they're natives to the land, and the colonizer is a European, and that's basically the conflict. So you have the Europeans who colonize the land, and you have the perspective of the people there. Some of them really hate them, and some of them get along with them, and there's conflict. And then, as Urim was talking about, there are people who harvest the sharks and use them for weapons. he's referring to extremists, to terrorists, African terrorists. So there's this conflict there with all those sides. And the chapter ends basically where Nathan, his father, built up that in their family lineage they can actually see into the Shamayim, and they can see things there. And towards the end, Nathan actually saw a snake wrapped around the soldier's neck, which he didn't understand. It freaked him out because no one else was seeing it, and no one was reacting to it. You know, like, why would a snake be wrapped around your neck and you don't even react? And then when Nathan blinks, he doesn't see it anymore. And that's where the prologue ends. And so then we go to chapter 1, where we go to a new POV of Rachel, who is a teacher, and she's borrowing another teacher's classroom to go into her research. And she's really into history, and she's really into ancient civilizations, especially the ones that fell, whose history is mostly lost. And she has artifacts of all kinds in the classroom. And as she's studying it, we get a perspective of two supernatural vestiges that are watching her and commentating on everything she does. And then the chapter ends where she's about to make a breakthrough discovery that these ancient people actually tapped into another dimension, another world, an entire other world. And then her husband visits her there with her, and he gets excited with that too. And as they both leave, because they have to go, it's revealed that someone was actually in the classroom the whole time with them. And he, when he listens to make sure they all left, he's guided by those very same two souls that are in that supernatural world, and they instruct him, and he basically burns down the classroom and destroys all of Rachel's research, and then takes off into the night, basically, and then makes it look like an accident. So that's chapter 1, and that's the introduction to the story. And now we're getting into chapter 2, where we go back to Nathan's perspective. So everyone good? Just want to make sure that all that got through just fine, no issues. Done sparring?
I'm here.
Yes.
Alrighty. Cool. All right. Go ahead and start the timer for 20, and I will read the first half of chapter 2. I did not practice, so please bear with me as I may stutter and stuff like that. Chapter 2. Nathan stared at the dragon hanging on the cashier's back. Blinking rapidly, he had completely missed the price the man told him for the suit. The man just stared at Nathan, but Nathan could not stop looking at it. It was a dragon, and it just hissed at him. "Young man," the cashier repeated. "You with us?" Nathan didn't hear him. He couldn't keep his eyes off of the thing. It just hung there, breathing puffs of smoke out of its snout. It was clearly a dragon, and its claws were lodged deep into the man's shoulders. Its red tail was stabbed and anchored into the man's side. Like a sloth residing on a tree, it hung comfortably on the back of this poor clothing store teller as he impatiently repeated himself. "Young man!" Nathan blinked and shook his head. What? The teller aggravatingly tapped on the register screen facing Nathan and pointed out the 300 it was displaying. "You asked for the price. Didn't think you would lose yourself in a daze, son." Oh! Nathan quickly remembered why he was here. He frantically fumbled out his wallet and counted the cash. Handing the bills to the teller, he stared at the creature in awe while the man counted, amazed that he was the only one seeing this thing. The dragon, aggravatingly, the dragon scowled as it hissed flames out of its nostrils. The man seemed not to even notice it, nor did he seem to be affected by its intrusions. The beast pushed one claw deeper into the man's right shoulder, making him move it uncomfortably. The man took the money and slammed it into his register, clearly angry. His expression had almost the same exact scowl as the dragon's. "Sold. Now get out! We got a line!" He pointed with his thumb to the exit. Nathan nodded quickly and said thank you, and while he picked up the suit and stared at the creature. It hissed at him once more, and then just like that, Nathan blinked, and it was gone. Only an angry cashier stood now, glaring at Nathan. Nathan walked backwards, staring as he left the store. There was no dragon anywhere in sight. "Aki!" The man sprinted and shoulder charged into Nathan as he left the shop, nearly knocking the freshly brought bought dress suit out of his arms and into the street gutters below. "Looks like you got the suit, my brother!" Laughing, the dark-skinned Heartland man with the short beard and short-cut afro wrapped his arms around Nathan, pounding on his shoulder. "And you chose the one I said to get! Excellent!" Stumbling and catching himself, Nathan quickly straightened back up and pushed back his long dreadlocks from out of his face. He deviously looked at the man and smiled. "Why, yes, and I'm about to take you out for that foul move!" Nathan wrapped his spare arm quickly around the man's neck and began to choke him as he suddenly cried out, "Aye! Aki! I fold! You nearly made me drop this expensive suit, you idiot!" Yes, okay! Letting him go, the man stumbled forward and coughed. He turned back around and glared. His serious face died instantly as his laughs busted out louder than the city streets around him. Both men embraced in a big hug, laughing hysterically as they used fists to pound into each other's backs. "Never change, Dan. You as well, Aki. You as well." There in the forest city of the Heartland, Nathan and Dan laughed far too loudly and walked down the busy streets of Bengalia's shopping district. All around them, civilians, diverse and many, scurried away from the two loud men as they passed by. For the colonist civilians particularly, they stayed far away from the two Heartland boys, and some even scoffed in annoyance as they passed by. For the other Africans like them, many of them smiled wide and laughed as well to themselves and to their families. It was a delight to see their people, nonetheless other people, period, who were celebrating and having a great time. It was clear, too, from the suit Nathan was holding that these boys were preparing for something special. "You ready, Aki?" Dan punched Nathan in the shoulder, voice booming and loud with excitement. "Marriage, my brother! How exciting!" Nathan laughed as he looked at the black and white suit folded neatly over his left arm. "Oh, you'd best believe it, my man," nudging him back. "As my Abba likes to say, it's not the wedding that makes the marriage, but the discipline and persistence of the long term that guarantees prosperity and success." Dan wrapped his arm around his friend's shoulders, holding him tight as he snorted and tried to look serious. "Whatever you just said, yup." Nathan laughed as Dan slapped his shoulder a few times and laughed out loud with him. Just realized I repeated that right there. Should word that differently. "Come, arise, marriage man. Let us go forth and catch up to the ladies. Let's see what they got." The two friends passed by the many shops, booths, and buildings, all covered with signs and people. Bengalia was a large militarized city, named after the Bengal tigers of India. The people who first took refuge in this place named it after their inspiration at seeing the great cats in their cross-continent travels. When they came here, they mistook the Heartland tigers for the same species, so the name Bengalia stuck. Now a bustling city thousands of years later, Bengalia was 1/3 constructed with European military outposts and 2/3 civilian living and trade. Ever since they came and colonized the Heartland, many of the original natives became displeased. Some left, but some remained. For the ones who stayed, it was safer to take refuge under these warring colonizers and try their best to coexist with them, since out in the forests of Canaan, rogue sorcerers and magicians have been wreaking havoc on the Heartland for generations. Only recently did these warlords change their means of attack to the colonizers instead of their own people. For Nathan's father, Urim, he chose this city to keep his family safe. After what happened in... Sorry, I accidentally changed tabs. After what happened in their home village, Urim had permanently become terrified of the skullcatchers, and thus he wanted to keep his remaining sons safe and alive. He chose one of the most fortified cities in the Heartland. Nathan looked around at the buildings and the shops as Dan guided him to the mall their friends would be in. Nathan saw the many soldiers, police, and military uniforms everywhere. Colonizers, equipped with numerous weapons and gear, standing at corners, walking with the civilians, and even buying from Heartlander-owned coffee shops alongside them. He watched as some would reside peacefully inside these places as they sipped on their cappuccinos and held onto their pistols, reading books right alongside the other African shop guests. Nathan looked farther ahead as he saw the one standing guard at every street corner. They were eyeballing the civilians continually as they looked for any signs of threats. One glared at Nathan in particular, and Nathan stared right back at him. The pale and dark-skinned man The pale and dark-skinned men held eye contact for a while before Dan tugged on Nathan's shoulder, directing him to the entrance of the mall. Nathan simply turned away and the soldier resumed his watch. Neither man exchanged words. "Hey yo, Trish!" Dan yelled across the clothing store, hushing the very air of the place instantly. Immediately all the women shopping in the store froze and stared at him. "What y'all got?" A young light-skinned British girl with short-cut brown hair held a finger up to her lips angrily as she glared at Dan with emerald eyes. "Dan, don't yell in here!" Embarrassed, Dan held a fist to his mouth and looked around at all the other women staring as he had just noticed them for the first time. Some of them narrowed their eyes while some of the Heartlander girls giggled and continued shopping. Dan looked back at the short-haired one and whispered frantically, face red and holding back a laugh. "I am so sorry." The girl giggled quietly as she approached the two. "You loud and obnoxious buffoon. Anyone told you that's what you are?" She slapped him in the shoulder. "All the time," Nathan smiled. Dan punched his shoulder, and the girl laughed loudly. She went to hug Dan, then two held tight. When they let go, she smiled and held out a hand. Dan took it and the friends did their practice handshake. Nathan watched the slaps, fist bumps, backhands, and all the in-betweens as they simultaneously went, "Hey!" and hugged again, both laughing far too loudly. The colonizer guests glaring at them shook their heads aggravatingly. Nathan smiled and the girl looked at him next. "What's up, Nate dog?" "Hey, Trisha." They both hugged and smiled as Dan looked around the small women's store. "Nice place," Dan said. "Pretty feminine." Trisha held out her hands to her sides and scoffed at him. "That's the point, you goof!" She punched him in the shoulder again and Dan shouted in surprise. Both laughed quickly again as Nathan looked around. "Say, Trisha." "Yeah, babe? Where's Elia?" Trisha and Dan both looked at each other and smiled wide. Nathan's face turned red as they stared at him and began to giggle like school kids. What? "She's trying on a new dress, babe, but not the dress, if you get me." She walked up and teasingly tapped on Nathan's chest with her finger a few times as she smiled and winked. "That's for you to see on the wedding day, lover boy." She laughed loudly as Dan smirked behind her, Nathan's face turning red as a tomato while they both teased him. "Speaking of," Trisha waved a finger into the air as she looked at a nearby stack of clothes she was holding, and then put down when they both barged in. "Aha!" She picked up the very large pile of clothes and threw them over the suit held in Nathan's arm, covering it completely while adding a large load of weight. "Hey! We gotta hide that suit from Elias, silly! It's not proper for your bride to see it yet. Come on now." Making tisk sounds, Trisha laughed as she made her way to the changing rooms. Looking over at Dan, Nathan scoffed loudly as he looked between them both in disbelief. "Where's that custom written in our texts? Let alone Ibri tradition?" Dan raised his shoulders, smirking. "European customs, I think," he said. "Hide the suit, hide the dress. I don't know, just go with it, ach." Nathan scoffed again and shook his head as he followed. Now carrying all these clothes, he felt like they were making him, the bridegroom, into a servant boy. Man, for goodness sakes, why can't we just wear tunics? When Elia stepped out of the dressing room, her beauty swept Nathan's breath away. "Hey, Ellie, looking fresh, girl," Trisha clapped as Elia walked out wearing a new dress. "Aw, thanks, Trisha." Her voice was sweet and smooth like honey, and Elia stepped forward and the two women hugged as they smiled deeply. Nathan marveled at her. Elia was wearing a blue and purple linen dress, so expertly crafted and modest, yet so very beautiful. She smiled as she pushed up her woolly midnight black hair, the afro flowing gently under her dark shoulders below. Her eyes a deep soil brown, she looked over at her three friends with love in her soul. Her cheeks flushed red when she saw Nathan staring at her, mouth hanging open. Trisha punched him hard in the shoulder, shattering his trance. "Hey! Stop staring, idiot!" Everyone laughed, and Elia made her way up to Nathan. They both met eyes, and Nathan's heart leapt up within his chest. Nathan remembered the day he asked Elia's parents to marry her, and the overwhelming joy they expressed when he did so. They knew Nathan well, and he knew them. Their relationship had been in the building for years. After Nathan had met his friends and caught feelings for Elia shortly after moving here to Bengalia when they were young kids. Tomorrow was finally the day. "What do you think, hon?" Elia's voice was gentle. Nathan reached out a palm and Elia gently placed her hand on top of it. Nathan brought it close to his lips and kissed it, making her blush. Like the moonlight shining radiantly upon the lakes of the heartland, so too do your eyes match the splendor and sparkles of the crystal waters flowing ever so splendidly around you, my love. Elia blushed deeply and laughed as she leaned in and kissed his cheek. Nathan smiled wide and continued to hold her hand. They both stared like deep lovers and they walked to the register. Behind them, Dan and Trisha giggled loudly as whispers shot back and forth between them, both friends making jokes about him being long-winded just like his father. Nathan laughed as well. Nathan laughed as he yelled at them while they all made their exchanges and bought the clothes. Never showing Elia the suit, as per Trisha's persistent requests, they left the mall and headed back into Bengalia's streets. As they walked, Nathan quickly took notice of the man holding newspapers on the corner, desperately crying out. He was a Heartlander too, but the thing that caught Nathan's eye in particular was the scaly, shaking monster residing on his neck. Its massive, bulging eyes shook nervously as they stared at Nathan. A gargoyle, just like the ones Europeans have legends about in their films. Once again, Nathan looked around and saw that he was the only one seeing the hideous thing. Typical. "Skullcatchers!" the man screamed as he waved the newspaper like a maniac. "Be warned! Be alert! Skullcatchers are here! Heartlanders beware! Attacks in the Heartland!" The rest of the civilians moved around him uncomfortably, ignoring the screaming man. They continued on their way. This was nothing new to anyone. Everyone knew about the terrorists and the extremists of West and North Africa. Why else would they live in a military home like this? Nathan didn't marvel particularly at the man, but as he stared at him, he marveled instead at the gargoyle. Just like the dragon in the clothing store, this small, bizarre, scaly thing seemed timid and afraid. As it rested on the man's shoulders, it was holding itself up with its hands wrapped around the front of the man's neck. Nathan looked at it, and it looked at him shakily. "Be warned! Flee! Flee!" the manic man screamed out as he tried to shake the newspaper at anyone passing him. Nathan's friends moved past the man uncomfortably, while the man saw Nathan stop to stare at him. He looked at Nathan intently and he handed it to him eagerly. Nathan grabbed the newspaper while still staring at the bug-eyed creature. It was hideous to look at, and being this close, Nathan genuinely felt amazed that such a thing could be invisible. Looking down, Nathan saw that the newspaper was Ethiopian. Ethiopia? That was thousands of miles from Bengalia. This man had clearly traveled quite a ways to deliver this, or he was just simply insane. As Nathan quickly glanced at the headlines, he saw that these attacks were thousands of miles away. That's a repeat, my bad. And there was no chance this group of sorcerers and warlords had any intentions to attack and gather sacrifices to their gods in a militarized fort city like Bengalia. The man continued to cry out and warn Nathan, but Nathan only stared at the gargoyle shaking fearfully on his neck and nodded slowly, pretending to hear him but truthfully not paying any attention. Just like the dragon was influencing the teller with anger, it was clear to Nathan this gargoyle was influencing this man with fear. He reasoned long ago that this must be what they represent, and for some reason he was the only one who could see these emotional manipulators. When Dan finally called out to him, Nathan noticed his three friends again, and he quickly walked towards them. When he did, he also noticed behind them a soldier was quickly approaching. Nathan moved faster. The soldier and him traded places. Continuing with his friends, Nathan peered behind him one last time and watched the soldier scold the screaming man. The gargoyle hissed at the soldier loudly, but not even a flinch of a reaction came out of him, or the man, or anyone else nearby. No one could see it or hear it except Nathan. He turned around and continued to walk. They made their way along the streets, and as they got close to the corner, Nathan looked at the very familiar hunting store quickly coming up to his view. Small but humble, he smiled when he thought about who was working inside. "Hold up, guys. I need to go talk to my father. I'll catch up in a bit." The other three yelled in confirmation, and Nathan opened the door to the shop. His friends headed to the ice cream shop across the street. Bells chimed his entrance, and Nathan opened the creaking door. And I will end it there. We'll resume the next conversation and the inciting incident next week. That is all. I was a nervous wreck. That I apologize for my crappy presentation skills.
I
I feel
think
like
it
someone
was
else should
fun
read
to
for
me.
me.
I think there was a few times where I was like, a few odd word choices here and there. Oh. Oh dear. He just died. Okay. It is now the Done and Aspiring show.
This is not good news for everyone else.
No.
There is no restraint. There is no filter. There is just
My bad. I'm on mobile. I pressed the home button by accident and it just completely dropped me out.
No worries.
Might be. Yeah, I was saying that it's funny how that always seems to happen. I'm writing, I'm editing, and I'm editing like crazy, right? And then as soon as I join the showcases, I realize, oh man, my word choices, yikes! I need to do what Tarek does and practice reading these beforehand more often. I did it for my first chapter, but I didn't do it for this. I didn't practice.
Hail Axe that has saved us.
What? I'm confused. What's happening?
Well, they were scared of the prospect of just me and Aspiring on the same stream.
No, I don't have to go. Don't worry. I just had connection issues.
No worries. Yeah.
Yep. Some copy editing. Well, believe it or not, this was pretty heavily edited, and that's kind of disappointing. I definitely need to improve my my skills. Aside from that, in the story so far, this is only the first half of the chapter. The second half is going to have a very intense conversation with his dad about his sister's death, and then the inciting incident from Nathan's side, because we already got the inciting incident for Rachel. Yeah, how did that go? How did I do from a story perspective on introducing 4 completely brand new characters in a really short amount of time?
I got a feeling that they were a little bit
You cut out.
very simple characteristics. Oh, sorry. I just thought like they're nice, simple characters. Characters that kind of come into sort of function. I didn't get too much whiplash, especially since this guy seems like he's relatively charming and would have a good friend group.
Nice.
I think I would need to read back through it to kind of get the flow of the story, especially since I had to step out. My dad was actually showing me something really cool.
Oh, okay.
So
yeah, I feel like it reads better than hearing me. I don't feel like I do justice to their voices. You know, these characters are based off of the mannerisms and personalities of real people I know. Like when Trisha says "yeah, babe," and just like her mannerisms and how she acts is based off of a really funny girl that I know. And yeah, and you know, I decided, you know, when writing black characters, I want them to be themselves, you know, not be black characters with other personalities, right? Like they're really being themselves. How, you know, how it is when I'm around them, you know, and how they actually do talk to each other. So a whole lot of laughing and very loud and just having a great time. That was definitely for Nathan and Dan. Yeah. All right. What about you, Aspiring?
I am just fucking lost. I missed, I think, at least one of your chapters, and I'm like, okay, where did we go from chapter 1?
I did do the recap. This is a multi-POV story, so it's not going to be, you know, one right into the other. It's going to be, you know, jumping back and forth. So, you know, you had Rachel's POV where the classroom burned down, and then we go to this. And then after that, we go back to Rachel's POV, and then so on and so forth. And yeah, you know, the prologue set up Nathan when he was a kid with his father, and that, you know, it set up. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention that the in the Shamayim there was a rebellion, an overthrowing there was an overthrowing attempt of the hierarchy there. That there's a kingdom that rules there, and so this individual tried to lead a coup against the king, and then he and all his companions got thrown out when it completely failed. So yep, that's to do with the lore of it all. And what did you guys think of how did I do with setting up that Nathan can see the creatures? He can see the exiles from the Shamaim.
That was actually very clever. I like that.
Oh, I also forgot to tell you all ahead of time. You probably get a lot of deja vu from this. This is that same scene from that chapter 1 I presented like a year ago, but reworked. It's really reworked. So the same characters, but yeah, it's different. I don't know if you noticed that.
I did not. I think a while back I remember you get him being on a train for the first chapter.
Train.
At least that was kind of.
Oh yeah, no, that was a train station that was nearby that I had described. That's right. The first chapter was Nathan and Dan were in the clothing store, and then Nathan was hearing voices. That was the original. And and since then I've changed it to where Nathan can. I've changed it, instead of people hearing voices, it's actually Nathan can see them. That's his ability, and we'll get more insight into that later. That he and his family line can see, and he can see these things that no one else can.
Hmm.
And that also, yep. And then you have Rachel on the other hand, who's trying to prove the existence of the place, and she's into the science of it. So that's fun. That's fun. Gonna connect the two POVs together in this large story.
Yeah. So this is actually a rock that me and my dad found. We actually quarried it out of a place in Moab. For reference for the size of this thing, that's
I see your hand.
Yeah, that's what my dad said.
Nice.
But that's a hammer.
Nice.
Yeah.
By the way, thank you everyone for your comments. Some word choices. Wow, there's a lot. Y'all were talking to each other. You did well. It was exciting. Thank you, Wolvie. I really liked your word choices. Nice vocabulary. Thank you, Becca. I'm told that by my roommates that I have a good vocabulary, and I'm trying to expand upon it to make it even better. So that's good to hear. Anything that you guys would like to point out? Anything that stood out to you?
Was it aggravated or aggravatedly?
Let me check.
Since aggravatingly, I don't think is grammatically correct.
I think I wrote aggravatingly. Yeah, I'm gonna change that. The teller aggravated. Yeah, I'm gonna change that to the teller tapped on the register screen facing Nathan aggravated. I'm just gonna change it to that. Thank you for catching that. That's why we're here.
Or in aggravation.
Yeah, that's good too. I like that. This is why we need professional editors, boys and girls. No matter how good we think we are, we suck. We need that outside help.
Yep. I'm trying to skip past the Oreo and gutter conversation.
What happened while I was reading?
I don't. Oreo war knows no bounds. Okay, Exula.
So.
Oh my goodness.
So yeah, it's important. Name for Oreos. Chocolate creamy filling. Back in the war. Join the correct side who have cookies. If you've seen actual good chocolate biscuits that I grew up with, you realize that Oreos are but a mimic of berry things. All I'm saying. Oh, but they have Dell stuff though.
Why are you showing this? Why are you? I could read this. Why are you showing this?
When he uploads it, they're not gonna have the chat. We must make sure this battle of the Oreo war is shown because it is a victory side of the Oreo.
This is rich.
have-
This is rich.
Guys, we have done it. We have tripped on the side of the Oreos.
All right, y'all. So, how did I do with the world building of the situation where you have European soldiers, and then like for example, like Trisha is British, so she's from Europe as well. But then you have Nathan, Dan, and Elia, who are all Africans, and they're best friends. So how did I do with the world building on that stuff?
I think that was established pretty clearly. I feel like I could get a very, very good feeling of that.
And did you guys catch the? I mean, it should have been really obvious. Did you catch the foreshadowing with the guy waving the newspaper?
No, I actually did not. I'd have to relook through that.
Gotcha. Yep, that was yeah. All right, cool. I guess that's all for me. I just hope that it all was understandable and you can tell what's going on. And and we'll finish the rest of the chapter next week. This one's really long because I introduced 3 friends to Nathan. Wait, 3? Yeah, I introduced 4 best friends. And the reason I do that is because I'm tired of seeing, in stories you have like 2 guys and one girl and everything, right? Like Harry Potter and all that stuff. So I said, you know what? I'm kind of sick and tired of that. I'm gonna make it where it's 2 guys and 2 girls in a story. So yeah, it's a long chapter because I'm introducing so many characters in such a short amount of time, purely for British representation. And then and then the next part, Nathan's gonna talk to his dad, and then we're gonna catch up with them and what happened since that night at the campfire. Cool.
I do like the broski moment when he almost knocks the suit out of his arms. That's totally a buddy thing.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, I was trying to be comedic.
It was great.
Comedy is subjective, so I thought it was funny, but I was curious to see how you guys would all react. What you would find funny and what you wouldn't. I was really curious. I felt like that's something that me and some of my African American friends would actually do. I feel like that would be our actual interactions. So I'd try to make the characters as natural and believable as possible.
I once saw a video of my 56-year-old mission president wrestling a giant Polynesian missionary and holding his own against him, despite the fact that this guy's freakishly strong and built like a truck. I think it was quite funny.
Nice. Yep.
It's not quite as funny as the Elder going through the wall, but it's pretty funny.
Nice. All right. Well,
Right.
I don't think I have any more questions. We'll get to the next part later.
Threesome
Cool.
charge.
Where was I on time, by the way?
You actually ended about 5 minutes early.
Okay, cool. I think the rest of the chapters, if I edit them right, because a lot of them are pretty intense, pretty long scenes, just like the first one, I think I can get it down to that length all in one chapter. But this one, because of the amount of characters there are, and just all this world building I have to do so fast, it had to be this long. So, yeah, this one I had to split in 2. But okay, cool. I think I'm getting. I want my chapters not to be so super long like the first one was. Everyone seemed to be very. What's the word I'm looking for?
Exhausted.
Yeah. That's a good word for that. Everyone seemed to be exhausted, so I'm like, okay. And I think I'm going to rework, chapter 1 and the prologue a little bit, actually. Probably make like the cut a few of those scenes and just get straight to like, Rachel's husband walking in and just getting that done quicker, rather than, taking my sweet time, having Rachel explain all that stuff. So, yep, stuff like that. I'm just trying to get the pacing right.
Understandable.
All right, cool.
It is.
Aspiring next.
Yep.
All right. So I have 2 fucking people who are basically not at all up with what I've done, so I'll give a very general recap. Yeah, I'm looking at you, both Trip and Becca. Trip has an excuse. Becca, you're Brit.
Becca, you're British. You have no excuse.
You're not allowed.
Oh man.
So this is a chapters where we're following the POV of Vampra. In the chapters we have currently gone through, Vampra has uncovered some incredibly dark truths about the people she has sworn loyalty to for her incredibly extended life, and is now currently, is it rogue or something else? AWOL, I'll say. She's going AWOL and is having a very important target of the people she was currently loyal to in her possession, and is trying to find a way off the planet that she's currently on, which is under an incredibly strict blockade and no one's willing to give her a ship. She interrogates or asks very convincingly and threateningly for someone to tell her where she can get one, and he points her toward a district where she might be able to find someone willing to leave who already owns a ship and risk getting blasted out of the sky. And so here we are, heading toward the Alpine District. I'll read your comments later, I see them, okay. Entering the Aplan District, Vampra was taken back to when she first saw Verdun centuries ago. Before the city went through a transformation, the buildings had been made of polished wood and stone, with walls slightly slanted slightly inward toward the top several stories high, like a slender pyramid with a flat top. The top would be a thick glass pane letting inside sunlight to settle on whatever mural they had made in the center. Those same buildings were now rotting away, covered in vines and creepers that cracked the stone open. The Aplan District was the last district awaiting the reconstruction that had transformed the rest of Verdun. A lifeless memory of what was still lingering. Thankfully, the residents and visitors of Verdun stayed away from the district for the most part. Those who didn't rarely ventured very deep, so they didn't see anyone in the streets as Vampire looked for a sign of which building was being used. It would be something indiscreet that wouldn't be noticed by an average passerby. If they were changing buildings periodically, then there would be some sort of telltale sign to recognize. Nala stopped. I sense people. Vampire perked up. Where? What direction? Also, before I continue, I forgot to make a note. I changed the revolutionaries' name to the dissenters. This was done last chapter, but it wasn't relevant then, so I neglected to mention it. Just small note.
Noted.
Considering for a moment, she pointed toward the left. Somewhere this way. Vampire rushed down the direction she gave. With so few people around, as possible a group of minds had caught Nala's attention. Nala had to stop her one more time, pointing back the way they came and making them turn. Her sense was too vague to pinpoint where to go exactly, but she narrowed down the area, and Vampire eventually recognized what building it was in. It was the only one with freshly broken vines near it. Before she even entered, Vampire could hear the slight hum of chatter, which went quiet as she stepped inside. Heads turned toward her at the sound of the old door scraping the ground, turning back to their conversations out of habit before snapping back, taking in the strange newcomer. Torin had been lying about this being like a temporary bar. The tables were old wooden crates with steel stools that could fit together to occupy less space. At one side of the room, a bunch of stacked crates made the bar proper, with a white mustache human behind trying to glare at everyone. The setup could have been assembled or disassembled in 2 minutes, if need be, or forgotten behind, not worth the effort. There were about 30 or so crates with 4 times as many stools, with some of the crates being pushed together to accommodate larger groups. They were all spaced far enough away from the others that nobody could hear you if you kept your voice low. Laid out under the smeared glass ceiling, the thin streams of sunlight reflected brightly off the cracked mural. The mezzanines that spiraled upward had gaps, and many of the doors into the building's various rooms were broken and open. Ignoring the stairs, Vampire pushed Nala toward a crate in the corner, where she could watch everyone was close to the entrance. Sitting Nala and her stuff there, Vampire approached the bar, extra aware of the dagger dinging into her back. Pointedly not meeting any of the stares, she leaned over to the bartender. Do you have water? The aged man raised an eyebrow at the question. He shot a glance at Nala, shrugged to himself, and brought out a unit screen. It might be wise to hold off on payment until I need to leave. The bartender rolled his eyes. I don't confirm transfers until the week ends. Wise precaution if your clientele doesn't want to be tracked. Picking up the unit screen, she confirmed the arrangements for a transfer. With him not being directly connected, she also didn't need to worry about whether or not she could still access her unit account. He'd find that out for himself later. Reaching into one of the crates, the bartender pulled out a bottle and handed it to her, blowing out his mustache. As Vampire walked over to Nala, several new customers walked in, all wearing cloaks or overcoats. Taking their seats, they started talking loudly, to everyone's visible chagrin. Ignoring what they were saying, Vampire gave the bottle to Nala and went back to the bar, passing several who decided to leave for somewhere quieter, with the new group making such a ruckus. The bartender huffed at the new group before turning to her. I need someone who owns a ship, someone intending to leave. Not even gonna buy a drink first, the bartender said in a rough voice. And no, water doesn't count. A ship, Vampire repeated. Do you know anyone here who can provide a ship? Rolling his eyes, the bartender grumbling to himself, he rested an arm in his makeshift bar and waved over to a crate. Go sit down, I'll call you back in a min. Lip curling at being dismissed, she returned to Nala, noting that even more of the original clientele were leaving. The bartender yelled, calling two people up to him, and started talking furiously. The smugglers she asked for, most likely. Sitting down, Vampire glared at the newcomers before realizing that the newcomers were the only ones left besides the two the bartender called up. Within a few minutes, everyone that had initially been there had been replaced by this obnoxiously rowdy group. Were they a local faction? No, nothing of what they wore made Vampire think they were local. It was too varied, like they were all off-world tourists who came in the same public freighter. Then why did everyone leave once they had entered? It couldn't have been just the noise. Keeping herself facing Nala, Vampire narrowed her eyes as she scrutinized them harder. She counted 6, wearing a mix of cloaks, coats, and hooded mantle. Nothing particularly unusual, something about what they wore seemed peculiar. Vampire's haunches stood up. They were hiding weapons. Large ones. The way they made their coats and cloaks never came too close to them. The uncomfortable posture in which they sat, how one side sometimes seemed larger than the other. Almost all except for one seemed to be carrying plasma rifles. And if they were this well armed... Nala, she whispered, grateful for her mask to cover she was speaking. I need you to do something. Can you try reading the mind of that group? Whichever one doesn't matter. Nala set down her water and turned, glaring at them as she concentrated. Vampire resisted the urge to tell her not to look at them. Making her look away now might be more suspicious. Turning back, Nala was about to make a head motion when Vampire hissed, Stay still! Say your answer, don't move your head! Paling slightly at her tone, Nala mumbled, Sorry, I couldn't with any of them. They have a mind house, Vampire determined. She hadn't expected Nala to be able to read them. If they had even one mind house spreading their mind wall amongst the group, Nala would have to try and break through, which the girl would not know how to do. She didn't even know how to split her own mind wall. Perhaps that's why everyone left. The mind host told them all to leave, or at least connected them to someone who did. But if so, what was their purpose here? An armed group made everyone leave a temporary bar. Vampire restrained herself from widening her eyes. Made everyone else but Nala and I. They hadn't even tried telling us. They hadn't seemed to tell the bartender and the two smugglers either, but perhaps they tried to contact Nala and were blocked. Nala was likely not experienced enough to let someone in with her mind wall up. The Vampire was now sure this group was here for her and Nala. She even suspected she knew who they were. Anarchists. The same ones who had sabotaged Mark's ships, or at least the ones responsible for whatever was supposed to happen after it was grounded. They'd been interested in Tillman and Nala and had managed to follow them here. How did they find me? Perhaps Torrent's lips weren't as tight as she had thought. Either way, it was too late. They were here, and she needed to deal with them. Trying to appear casual, Vampa removed her cloak and unwrapped her coat from her side. Wearing the cloak and then the cloak over it, as if to keep up some semblance of disguise, no matter how poorly, she kept an ear out for any screeching of stools or approaching footsteps. A minute or so passed, but nobody approached. Did the act not arouse their suspicion, or were they holding back? Reaching down, Vampa grabbed her deformed plate and surreptitiously started to attach the straps to her forearm, like a buckler shield. Once as tight as she could manage, she whispered to Nala, "We're going to the bar. Once we reach, go hide in the corner." Vampa ignores the confused frown Nala gave her as she placed the plasma pack under a stool. It was going to be too risky to carry with how she fought, and stood, side in her hand. She made Walla walk ahead of her and was prepared to swing at the slightest motion from the anarchists, but they merely watched as they passed. Perhaps they didn't want to risk attacking with Nala so close. They were here for her, and they saw Vampa as an obstacle. And am I? The question made her stop a step away from the bar, smugglers and bartenders still talking amongst themselves. What was she protecting Nala from? The anarchists were trying to do the same as her. Should she give Nala to the anarchists? She had no plan beyond getting her out of the system, not for Nala or her for herself, and the anarchists held answers she didn't even have questions to until recently. But would they take her along with Nala? Head of the Angels, second to the sources. Would they even believe a surrender? Is it not worth a try? One of the smugglers left, the door scraping the ground once before Vampa heard the door open a second time, and the other smuggler and bartender turned to her. So, I might have... He cut off, his eyes widening to something behind her. I know, Vampa told him. You and your acquaintance may wish to step away. The bartender nodded, backing away, the smuggler following. Turning around, Vampa saw the anarchist standing in front of her in a half-ring, 3 more having just joined the 6, plasma arms out and pointed at her, clot masked over their lower face and armor no longer obscured. Nala hid behind her, gripping the case tightly. You're the anarchist that sabotaged Mark's vessel? Vampa inquired. The ones responsible for achieving the girl? They didn't respond, though a few of their scowls deepened. If you want the girl, there's no need to fight for her. Taking a deep breath, Vampa continued. I surrender both of us to you. Their eyes shot confused glances and darting glares at each other. One of them, the one wearing a mantle hood, stepped forward. Part Phillies, she had black hair instead of white and seemed to be the one they were deferred to. She kept her sidearm pointed at Vampa's chest. A nice offer, made at several gunpoints. Why should we believe you? It's a somewhat long story, and time is short as it is. Oh? How so? There's a blockade for this little one. I can help you get through it, she lied. So you accompany us, and then what? You want us to take you to our base? Vampa shrugged. Where I go, then, I'll leave up to you. The part Phillies narrowed her red eyes. If you're in such a cooperative mood, then send the girl over to us first. Vampa flexed her hand, motioning for Nala to go. She was safer at the other end of the plasma arms anyways. When she didn't move, Vampa looked down at her. Nala looked hesitant to approach the masked figures. Go, it'll be okay. Nala nodded and stepped over to the squad leader, standing next to her. The part Phillies put a hand over her protectively. Now if you could put down your weapons, the squad leader asked. Vampa looked over the squad, still pointing their plasma arms at her. I notice you haven't lowered any of yours. I thought you were surrendering to us. You haven't yet accepted that surrender. They stared at each other, red on red eyes glaring at red on white. The filly's expression hardened, and she stepped back as the rest opened fire. And that is the end of the chapter. That's critiques, concerns.
The oral arc of the story is nice.
Pretty exciting.
Yeah. I'm interested to see what happens after that cliffhanger, definitely. There were a couple of weird word choices here and there, like The Vampra's haunches stood up.
Is that not like the kind of shoulder blade at the back? Haunches?
No, your haunches are your ass.
Oh no!
So what I meant tackles, you're saying?
Yeah.
No, that's so cursed. Vampire started twerking. No. No.
Oh,
Oh,
thank
man.
you, but also fuck you.
Oh, you know, aspiring. You know what's really funny? How everyone, unless they see how it's spelled, we always spell Vampira without the H.
Really?
Yeah, look, see right there. Vampra. We all spell it without the H for some reason.
Yeah. But yeah, I just find that it was kind of like haunches, like that's the definition. A buttock and thigh considered together in a human or animal is the definition of haunches.
Can you show it on screen so we can clip this?
Nice. Oh man.
That really is cursed.
Oh man.
So yeah, Hackle stood up, I guess.
Yeah, the hackles on the back of your neck is usually how it is. Shoulders twitches also works. But yeah, it's like just
Did you actually like imagine what I actually ended up saying?
I imagine what you ended up saying, but I was like, that I don't think that's what he meant to say.
Dunn is far more mature than that, good sir.
Holy shit.
Well, aspiring. I will say this: it's pretty exciting.
This build up and payoff with Vampire realizing what's going on, and then the father sacrificing himself so the daughter can get out, and this little like duo that they have with Vampire and the young daughter as they're on the run. It's pretty great. That's pretty great. So that's pretty exciting to see what will happen with them.
I'm glad. And I'm also glad I was able to leave you all at a cliffhanger.
Yep.
That was not the initial intention, but I ended up doing it, and yay.
Nice. Well, you know what they say, cliffhangers are excellent ways to end chapters.
They are the best way.
Not always. You don't want to overdo it. You don't want to be good and overdo it.
That is not more mature. That is also true.
I knew someone would say that. I knew it. I was waiting for it.
You need that rocket clip where there's like I forgot what they say to him, but he's like, "That is true. You're an what?
You speak about things you don't understand. That is true. You have no respect."
This is also true.
I actually my audio cut out
Right as you ended the chapter. How did it end? I completely missed it.
Oh, like very end?
Yeah, just like the cliffhanger, basically. What was it?
Let me go back there. Fired.
You don't have to reread it. Just say what happened.
Okay, the anarchist fired at Vampira.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I heard some of the words, but this aux cord I'm using is broken, and it just failed on me right at the end. And then when I get it plugged back in, I heard you say thoughts, comments, concerns, and I'm like, damn it.
And for those in the chat who don't know, anarchists and dissenters are one and the same. The anarchist is what the certain faction calls them, and the dissenters is what they refer to themselves.
Gotcha. Yep, pretty good stuff. Pretty exciting to see how this Vampira arc ends.
Yeah, I'm interested to see how it ends too.
You have, I think, 2 more chapters before my 3 like character arcs for the beginning are done, where they've all had their POVs, and then it's just going to be chronological, as all the POVs are now. What?
They're me? How kind of you.
I will make a character named Dunn and do horrific things to him.
Oh,
Beware.
man.
I already made a historical character named Dunn with the extent and purpose of making just a bad Dunn pun out of him.
I
So
remember
Dunn-
that actually.
Done. So you know, in my story, we haven't gotten into it yet, but there is quite a bit of death. I feel like it's very necessary to have a death scene for a Dun. Just have someone shoot someone and they end up being done. Their name happens to be Dun. And then they just walk right up to him and they just go, "You're done." Welcome right there.
Becca, so the Anarchists and Dissenters are the same group, just different names, and they are not aligned with the Angel Tyrant things. They are opposed.
Make a novel about Dunn where he dies slowly for 3,000 pages, dying it.
I could. Wait.
Consider it done.
I will consider it. Thank you.
Did he say 3,000 pages? Because I can do 3,000 words. 3,000
Consider
pages,
it-
I still have to
No.
read.
Consider
No.
it done, Valerian. I'll get that to you next week. Just have 30 chapters of Dun dying.
So, made at several gun points. Why was this interesting to you, Mr. Dunn?
Well, it's just kind of an interesting turn of phrase. It's not really bad, but it's just like, oh, okay, having it at gunpoint, that's a good variation. Oh.
The puns are never done. So, yeah. Apologies.
No,
I don't
not
know.
not yet, no.
Okay. I don't know if I think I've made the Anarchist Dissenters thing quite clear in the previous chapter, so it might just be specifically this chapter alone that can make it slightly confusing for you. Yeah, this is why I'm like, I don't know with Becca, because she doesn't come on every stream, unfortunately.
Let's start with the death, please. I beg of you. The puns
I'm sure she'll
are
be
never
first.
done. The puns are never done,
Phrasing.
apparently.
Shoulders twitch. Da, 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 da.
But yeah, the haunches
Ow.
thing is going to kill me for days. That's hilarious.
I'm glad. I'm glad I was able to give the image of Vampra twerking by accident. One of the deadliest people in the entire Ascending territory, feared among billions. One of the
that's
best
so
fighters
So cursed.
twerking in a bar.
She's basically pulling a Megan the Stallion thought crap song.
No. No. Man, look what Wissia had to miss out on.
This is worse than anything Wissy has done.
Yeah.
Why do you keep addressing me? You don't have to.
Yeah, I mean, what can be done, man?
So done. And there's also Xula. The Becca comment about not understanding where my characters are a lot of the time. How do you feel about this?
I would have to have more context. I feel like I get a sense of their setting. Maybe she's talking about spatial awareness is sometimes slightly off.
Becca, give more details, please.
Aspiring, to answer your question on that, personally, I don't really mind because I read books often where there's no setting description. It's just kind of you're expected to fill it in yourself based on a previous chapter that showed setting description, you know? Or sometimes dialogue will show the setting description, like, oh, turn that doorknob right there to the big metal gate. You know, I'm just making this up on the top of my head. But yeah, I don't really see anything wrong with that, to be honest.
There's nothing necessarily wrong inherently. Like different writers have different balance and description, but it is something I like to know.
Right,
Because
right.
of the style, I want to know that. And there's always the thing of, is it style or is it just confusing?
Mm.
Especially
Yeah, I
since
like to see it. Oh, sorry.
I do like trying to make give you guys an image of the settings, because I'm trying to make all the settings very varied. Like they're not meant to be generic, they're meant to be unique in a way that you can be like, oh yeah, this is this place afterwards. Like the setting you'll sooner or later be seeing Callan is like a grand golden city.
So
Better
maybe
than
she
fucking
break-
Asgard.
Maybe she break dances.
I'm sure if this sells, I might be able to get a breakdancing game where Vampira is doing that, like with fucking Han Solo in that weird game that I barely know exists. I'm Han Solo. I'm Han Solo. Solo. Fucking catchy ass song. But let's see. It's probably partially my lack of wider context, to be frank. Possibly. You are coming into this chapter. I have no idea how long. I don't even know what last chapter it was. Actually, wait. I think she was there for when Vampira and Mark fought. I remember Tarek being on there for that, I think. Or I think maybe it was the one before. I remember Tarek being like, damn, you did that, okay. Ollie. What does that even
Bollywood Vampira. Oh man.
Just starts breaking.
Done. I have to use a Bollywood clip for one of my intros. Please let me. Those are so good.
Bali.
Those clips are so good. Oh man.
Did someone say anarchy? Hey Raptor, nice to see you.
Hi Raptor. Stars connect.
Welcome.
Oh no. Oh no. Oh no, coach.
I don't think Dunn's done that, Raptor. He probably has a million other names. Maybe Balerion, and that's it.
Oh, I probably should do some names. Like, I should call Becca female dun clown, British female dun clown.
Okay, tone it down, dear mate. Tone it down. British clone is fine. British dun clone is fine. It doesn't even need to be female.
Give my nickname
Oh, he died. Also, Becca says, when I say where, I mean literal location, by the way. So, what does that mean?
I guess the setting and spatial awareness is slightly off for her.
Like, the chapter is literally just dumping them in a new location. The Aplan District. I keep calling it Alpine, it's Aplan.
Damn it, phone.
No, if he fucked himself, that would be gay.
Yeah. And we avoid the big gay here.
Oh, Becca doesn't work on Fridays anymore. Yay.
Nice.
He committed suicide to escape dun jokes.
This is the real reason Wissia left so fast.
Clearly. That's called self-insert.
Oh, this is rich.
I do try doing that, Becca, trying to describe setting between dialogue, but holy shit, do you understand how big these chapters fucking are? I keep having to split them. I need to have some conciseness and some extent.
Yep.
It's
Been there, done that way too many times now. Good night.
I would honestly try to if I could do it and keep the pacing. And also not make my book so big it will freak anyone out who I try to sell this to. Like,
Actually, to be
trying
honest, Aspiring, when I see large books, those actually intrigue me more for some reason. It makes me go, okay, it's big for a reason. I want to know why.
I'm thinking it more of like me trying to give it to an agent. I don't know if an agent wants to arrest someone's first book being over 200,000 words.
Oh boy.
I'm trying to aim for 200,000 just because I know Sanderson accomplished that, so it means it's possible. Someone's willing to. But that, I have no idea.
Oh no. I'm looking at myself with my 77 chapters. Oh no.
Mm-hmm. Between the dialogue, Bollywood Vampira, that's cursed. I'm feeling like milking a joke. Balerion, I fear what you mean by this.
Oh boy.
Oh, you often. Okay, that makes sense. Do you think it is kind of the spatial awareness thing?
Whiskey
Yeah,
is a wise man.
Why are you giving him ideas? We don't try to, it just happens. That's Trip, that's a banned word.
I mean, that's just how it's done, man. That's just how it's done.
Yep, indeed, it is me.
I'm still laughing at Wissia's reaction, like, not last week, but the week before. No, I'm done. You're finished. And he just did not catch it at all.
Well, I have some of those, Becca, so you'll have some quirky, colorful environment descriptions here and there, because some settings are just, I put some work into it, you know?
Oh, damn, Raptor, you have 70 plus. Oh, whew, chunky.
None of us can write small shit. It's just impossible for us. For some
What can I say? I got a multi-POV story with like 10 POVs. I counted them all in my head the other day, and I was like, oh, crap, that's a lot. Wow.
I've done a few 80k word books, which amounts to about 160 to 200, depending on the formatting. So I've done a bunch of short stuff.
Raptor, you have now aroused my curiosity. How on earth are you making 70 plus chapters about apes and lizards? And now I'm very curious.
Apes together, strong.
Oh, if it's anything on the quality of which one was it? The Planet of the Apes, like the third or second one that was really good. If it's anything like that, then now I'm really excited.
The second one, I love the second one. The second one's great.
That one's like critically acclaimed. It's so good. Apparently, I haven't seen it myself, but I've heard good things.
It's actually one of my favorite movies of all time.
Nice. Lizard eat mini ape together. I don't know how to write small either.
You still have to read your stuff on here, Becca.
Yeah, Becca, when are you presenting?
She's gonna cuss you out now, Axula.
It's a rite of passage. You must join the Club of the Bard.
Club of the
Bard? Becca brought up a good point. I've got specific tastes. I like quirky, colorful environment descriptions. So that's a good point.
So,
and I have some of those, but this chapter needed to get done.
Shut up!
Why did it need to get me? I don't fully understand.
Oh man, we need Tarek in here just to just cuss all of us out. Yeah. Next week, I'm on next week. Woo!
Yeah, next week's full, isn't it?
Yeah, I believe so.
Fuck.
Sorry, Aspiring. I wanted to go back to back since it's the same chapter.
Fair. And we are near a point where I have run out of currently written chapters. I have like 3 more, and then I'm working on the 4th.
Gotcha.
So hopefully I can keep ahead. If not, there is something else I may potentially read on here. And hell, Dun and me might read our collab after it's done and wins. Just,
after
for amusement. Yeah. That'd be fun.
I kind of wanted to do that, but at the time I was working like crazy. I barely had any time.
Oh yeah, I got that.
Oh, unfortunate. I'll just wait for the next one.
However, I have terrible time management, and this actually does help me get things done that aren't actually very important.
Oh man.
Legit, Beck and Raptor are having a tug of war for the Bard. Which collab are you referencing, Trip? The one you did with Dane?
I am looking forward to Tarek next week, completely decimating the rest of my chapter, as well as whatever Raptor is going to present.
I just look forward to Tarek, period.
He is one of the more amusing. Also, I do actually like his stuff now that I managed to fucking read it. I'm not lost as much anymore. Though I'm still lost. He still doesn't let me get the chapters leading up to the ones he's reading. Tarek, do that. Becca, tell Tarek to do that. I need to read these.
Oh yeah, Tarek's story is excellent.
Oh yeah, very much like it. And he also just has the perfect little girl voice, no matter how it sounds.
So odd.
Like he has the right to just completely roast all of us because
Trip, please do it.
pause offer clause. Big mistake. You do not tell the raptor in the top hat with a profile picture of a raptor with a top hat. Pause off.
But yeah, Trip, please get Dane for that. Please. That would be fucking great. Tarek's little girl voice. Trip, you need to be there for one of Tarek's readings. Actually, yeah. Wait. Damn it, she's not there next week. Fuck.
Yeah, but it is recorded on YouTube, and you can watch it anytime on Lord Commander Dunn's YouTube channel.
She has no time for that.
And we all have time for it. It's called commutes to work, commutes to schools, stuff like that. You take a bus, listen to it then.
Don't remind me. I'm going to actually have to be commuting after next week. Fucking college is starting again.
I am so glad I am done with college for this foreseeable future.
Still have a little bit more to go.
Yeah. Alrighty. So.
Turn. Let's go.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, Mordred's getting ready to go rescue the High Priestess, right?
Yep.
Oh yeah, we're getting to the climax, aren't we?
Yeah.
Or the rising action. Let's go.
Yep. Basically, what has happened is the High Priestess has been captured by the giants, and now Mordred has to go in and rescue her, since he is the only person capable of fighting giants, especially a magical superpowered giant. Alrighty. Maeve had rarely seen a cage the size of a small room, but now she was inside one. The giant who had taken her sat on a massive throne, an enormous curved sword with no crossguard, or just notches down the blade, and a plain rounded chunk of steel extending from the bottom, resting from the arm of the seat. The other giants, just like her captor, just slightly shorter, stood throughout the column stone room, all wearing plate armor and carrying large weapons. Some of them even had fire threaded through their beards, not burning strands, actual fire. Maeve shivered despite the heat and glanced up at her captor, trying to see any expression that would give away her fate, but the creature's face was as impassive as rock. This place was unlike anything she'd seen before. It was as if someone from the ancient world had taken the columns in large buildings of old, then ramped them up to a scale 2 to 3 times that what it would be for a human. She put her hand on the bars of her cage, looking around the room, trying to determine how old it was. Architecture had always been an interest of hers, and this place was fascinating. It would be better if she wasn't in a cage, but she might as well. I'll make the best of it. Thinking realistically, I'm probably stuck down here for the foreseeable future. Sure, she admitted, sinking to a seated position so that she could get more comfortable. Rescue is not going to happen based on what I saw coming in. This place is basically impossible to find unless you know where you're going and how to open the door. Then there's also the guards. Escaping was also out of the question. She wouldn't get more than a few feet, even if she could climb to the top of the cage where the lid was. I hate this. She glanced around, trying to figure out any way that this could possibly work in her favor. Unfortunately, it seemed as though she would never escape. Hey! She called up to the giant on the throne. Would it be too much to ask for some food and some books? I'd love to at least have a history of this place. I'm quite bored down here. Without a change of his hand, the giant waved his hand, creating a stack of books and a table full of food inside her cage. Thank you! She waved it gratefully up at him and walked over to the books. Casually, she thumbed through them until she found something she liked. Putting everything else out of her mind, she sat down at the table and began reading while occasionally shoveling food into her mouth. So, why exactly am I here? She asked. The giant looked down at her and rolled his eyes. Well, I shouldn't have expected you to remain silent this whole time. He rubbed his forehead, expression calm. I brought you here because I want to draw some old enemies to me. Who? She asked, turning a page on her book. Ancient foes, some of them you know it by appearance at least, but one of them is the Herald of Guinevere people. The giant put his hand on the arm of his throne, fingers closing on the edge like a vice. Some of them believe that I am on their side, but in reality I want these people gone so I can finally ascend to the surface. My people have been growing their numbers, and now we are ready to take our rightful place as gods. There is only one goddess, sir, and I'm pretty sure she doesn't look like you, Maeve said mildly. Ah, so it is true what I've heard about you humans worshipping Guinevere. The giant leaned back in his chair and rested his chin on his fist. Let me tell you something. Your faith was never intended as an organized hierarchical religion. It was created by a son grieving evil she valued. And over the centuries, you humans changed it into a state church. The giant chuckled. It seems like what we create, you slowly warp and twist. I'm afraid I don't quite understand. Maeve interlaced her fingers and leaned back in her chair. You're using some very vague terminology. It's a very long story if I went into exhaustive detail, little human. The giant and said shortly. Essentially, long years have warped what happened. Artorias, the one you named the Shadow King, slew Guinevere, the goddess, only to have her son, Mordred, the Night Wolf, leave preaching his mother's word to avenge her death. And then Mordred, the one you named the Herald of the goddess, did what he could to preserve her memory. And in doing so, he unwittingly created a church that has stood for thousands of years. What? Maeve shook her head. How do you know this? Because I was there. The giant leaned down and placed his hand on the top of the cage, fixing his red eyes on her. Unconsciously, Maeve huddled in on herself as he glared down, a horrible fire seeming to burn in those inhuman scarlet orbs. Irrational fear flared inside her, making her want to scream, far greater than what she should be feeling. I was there when Mordred faced his king in single combat and slew him with his own blade. I was there when I led my final assault against his brethren, only to see him destroyed. Been cast into the Amaran Plain for over 3,000 years. The fear rapidly intensified, causing her to drop to the ground and freeze up. Narrowing his eyes, the giant slowly returned to his contemplation, but her fear still remained. Putting her hands over her head, Maeve tried to get control over herself, but the fear kept on intensifying. She had her emotions amplified before during her training, just so that she could understand how to notice when magical manipulation was happening to her, but this was far more intense than anything she'd experienced before. Unable to hold it back, she screamed and hugged herself, trying to vent her rioting emotions. Fingers digging into her skin in an attempt to divert her attention from the crippling terror raging inside her head. Abruptly, it vanished, leaving her shaky and shivering on the ground, several bruises forming where she clawed at her arms. "I'm going to die in here," she thought, wrapping her cloak around herself and trying to recenter herself. "I'm going to die in here." Mordred patted Breeze's neck and carefully pulled her saddle and bridle off. "Now, I need you to stay around here," he instructed. "Once I whistle, I'm going to need you to come running." Whickering, she stamped a hoof and tossed her head, then wandered off to graze. Breathing out slowly, Mordred put his hands in his belt and glanced toward the mountains in the near distance, then turned his attention toward the ring of stones set inside the hills surrounding him. This place was once the entrance to the Underground Kingdom. At least it was the methods that Elder One knights used to get through the gates, and in rather than through the main gate. The stones themselves were carved into blocks, the ancient script it scratched into the levered sides of the rock. Stroking the stones with his offhand, Mordred walked into the center of the ring and placed his palm on the round stone that functioned as an activation lever. Carefully, he puts the stone, then pushed down. Immediately, the ground started lowering, rock and dust rising as the ancient mechanism began to move after millennia of disuse. Flexing his deformed hand, Mordred leaned against one of the rocks as he descended into the depths of the earth. The gray sunlight above him slowly faded away as the lift went deeper and deeper into the ground, replaced by a more reddish light as he got closer to the underground city. Finally, he reached the bottom, revealing a ruined city with small streams of magma flowing through broken rivulets, almost like someone had created an aqueduct that had begun cracking. Pain, fire, chains pulling him down to the depths of the Amaran Plain, his body being consumed by fire every day, day after day. Mordred summoned his sword and slammed it into the ground, focusing in on the weapon and using it to anchor him in the here and now. "It's done," he whispered. "The pain is over. You haven't moved on yet. Just breathe." He couldn't remember having to deal with this sort of thing before his death. Horrible things had happened to him before this. Serious injuries, horrible battles, and other traumatic experiences. However, this was the first time he was suffering from psychological aftershocks. He gripped onto the sword as hard as he could, then lashed out in all directions, changing the magma to rock. The heat remained, but the magma turned black. Relieved, Mordred stood up and pulled the sword free from the rock. "Come on," he remarked to the sword. "We have a fair maiden to rescue." Armored feet clanging against the stones, Mordred took off running. Kara narrowed her eyes to the trail and slowly followed the hoofprints toward the edge of the tree line. "So, what is he doing exactly?" Gritting her teeth, Kara turned her attention back to Laviarna on her horse. She wasn't sure why she defended Mordred so vehemently earlier. Maybe being called a heathen had something to do with it. Despite being the only person that had actually seen the things that her people had worshipped as gods, at least that she had met, he never treated her as anything other than a respected friend. Real contrast, I suppose, she thought, dusting off her hand and on her pants and stood up. Well, he's going to get her back. X, she shrugged, patting poor Wrath on the neck as he turned his head to glare at the priestess. The big ugly horse clearly wanted to throw her off his back, but Wrath was a good boy, and he did what he was told. For her part, Laviarna seemed just as uncomfortable on his back as he was with having her in the saddle. "Is he going to bite me?" Laviarna looked down at Wrath suspiciously, then sawed at the reins to pull his head to a safe position. He'd like to, Kara thought. He doesn't like any... But she refrained from saying that. He doesn't like having anybody but me on his back. But he's willing to make exceptions if I tell him to. Maybe I'll walk for a bit. The priestess slid out of the saddle rather ungracefully, then smoothed her skirts. As soon as she was off his back, Wrath snapped at her, causing her to scream and leap back. "No!" Oh. Kara grabbed his reins and patted his neck in a way he liked to show she wasn't angry with him. "That animal is a menace." Laviarna glared at Wrath, backing away slowly. "Say that again and I'll let him loose," Kara said flatly, slacking her grip on the reins as Wrath glared balefully at his former passenger. Laviarna took the hint and shut up. "Never thought I'd miss the heretic," the priestess muttered. "I'm sorry, could you repeat that so I can hear?" Kara put 2 fingers to her ear for emphasis. "I never thought I'd miss the damned heretic." Laviarna put her fists on her hips. "At least he believes in my faith as opposed to your pagan nonsense about fish things under the sea." "Yeah? So what?" Kara shrugged, covering how angry she was at having her traditions denigrated. "So we should have done better at trying to convert you people to the true faith." Laviarna kept digging that hole. "We'd have thrown you off the islands within a few days," Kara countered flatly. "Some of you would have seen the errors of the traditions of your fathers." Laviarna insisted, clearly oblivious to the fact that the hole was now up to her waist. "My foremothers and forefathers taught us well, and we're not interested in your goddess." Kara slowly stroked the leather-bound handle of her sword. "I suggest you shut up now and save yourself a broken nose." "Violence is the recourse of the dim-witted to prove their point," Laviarna sniffed. "I'm not using violence to prove my point. Yet. I'm telling you to shut up because you're an obnoxious bitch." Laviarna seemed about to say something, but when Wrath stamped his hoof, she closed her mouth. "Anyway," Kara continued, "the trail goes that way. If we need help, we can use the compass," she thought, absently, reaching into her jacket and pulling it out so she could check the direction of the spindles. Thankfully, it was pointed at the trail along the trail, so she didn't have to adjust course. "Good," Laviarna remarked. "So, what are we going to do?" "Probably nothing but sit down and complain about how we're stuck with each other," Kara shrugged, considering we have nothing to talk about and nothing we can do to help the situation. Sounds like a self-pitying and overall miserable experience. Laviana rolled her eyes. I'd also be fine with peace and quiet. Kara patted her horse's neck affectionately and started walking down the trail. That's all she wrote.
Oh, is that it?
Yep.
Oh, I thought that was part of it.
Nope, that's all.
I thought you were gonna say I'm done. You always say I'm done.
No, I'm just gonna say that I'm finished as well as being done.
Well, that was pretty great. You had me laughing a few times.
Nice.
Especially especially the when she called out to the giant in the prison. I'm bored out of my mind in here, and then he just waves and gives her the stuff. She says, "Thank you." I pictured that in like a movie scene, and I'm just laughing at how silly that is, and I love it. And then her conversation with the giant was really good, really good. And yeah, towards the end, you need to stop encouraging this cretin. And that's where Shobeka's comment. I need to bring in that Monsters Inc. clip where he goes, "It's cretin. If you're going to threaten me, do it properly." But yeah, I liked the and then that conversation towards the end where I forget how it went. Like, only fools use violence as a means to get what they want or to prove their point. I'm not trying to prove a point. You're obnoxious and annoying. Shut up. That was pretty great. I was laughing.
Nice.
Yep,
Yeah,
good stuff.
Yeah. It's definitely like pretty realistic for like ancient religions to talk about religion and mostly just try to put each other down, especially if they're a very organized hierarchical religion that has a big following.
Mm-hmm.
Following as opposed to kind of outside the grain religion.
Right.
Yeah. They're going to a rave dance. Get undone. Is that supposed to be a brand of underwear?
This stream is rich, dude. This whole stream is so cursed. From Wissia getting mad that we kept pointing out how many times he writes chest to aspiring, twerking, vampira.
I'm actually going to add that in highlights in case I ever do.
Yes, please do. I'm dying over here. You can hear me cracking up.
Yeah.
Boy, we got a bot.
I do think one of my best lines is, "I'm telling you to shut up because you're an obnoxious bitch."
Yeah, that was great. That came out of nowhere, but it was really good. Well, no, it didn't come out of nowhere. I'd say that caught me off guard, and I was laughing. I was like, dang.
Also, Bond said punches.
Yeah, Aspiring, make sure to clip the exact part where Dunn read the definition of the word you used, and we all just lost it simultaneously.
Yep. The Bard heard about the twerking. Maybe I need to get a twerking clip from somewhere.
No.
Use it as Aspiring's new intro.
I swear to God. I swear to fucking God.
By the way, Raptor, are you still here? Dunn, you should use my intro clip as our outro.
Oh,
Raptor.
You mean this?
Oh, he's gonna do it right now.
You mean this one?